everyone. Welcome back for another edition to the Orlando Ballers live stream. This week we've been doing quite a bit of pick and rolls, following along from our Tony Parker series, so to speak. But we're going to focus on the basic part of the pick and what it's used for mostly in basketball, and that's for a pick and roll. So when we talked about the pick, and we saw last week, we use that typically to get open, create some space for open shot, or cause enough confusion on defense that it might lead to someone else getting an open shot. So now we're talking back to a two-man game where we have two people doing, one's doing a pick, one's holding the ball. One is setting a pick on the defender, and as they're doing it, they are both being very cognizant of reading what the defense is doing. So the big man that might be setting the pick in a situation could be reading his man, is the man hedging up, and I'll explain this in detail what hedging is, but as they're coming up for the pick, is the big man overplaying or is he sagging off? Is he touching? So we talked about this in practice where I said if you don't see someone behind you on a pick, you should slip it every time, meaning dump down to the basket. You don't even need to set the pick because that person is obviously not engaged. So if you know he's running with you, but he's not making body contact, and you can't see him when you're looking kind of behind you, take him back door because he's just kind of not really engaged. So what we covered, and I'm going to show you in a series of videos, what we covered is the first part of the series, and that's just setting the pick. When the pick is correctly set, then we open up the opposite way with our hands up, looking to receive the basketball. So I'm going to start this first video with some of the greatest to ever run this play. There are a lot of great players. But I've got some old grainy video, so there's a little delay to it. It's the only one I could come up with. It's basically a highlight of John Stockton and Karl Malone. And you're going to see, I think, the first play after Karl opens up with a dunk, you'll see that just like we talked about, he set the pick and he opened up to receive an easy pass for a score. And we'll kind of stop the video and go back over some other things that we can do outside of this. All right, so I'm gonna hop into the video now. Remember, there's a slight pause for this video, so you might see a black screen, you might see me in the bottom, so we'll start talking through it just like last week. All right, so here's a slight pause that I mentioned. So Karl just scored. Now he's coming to set the pick, spins the way that you're supposed to, gets an easy score. Okay. Now Karl is just playing his man. His man is really not doing what he's supposed to do. So all he did was just back him up. He felt him not, So now here's the same thing. He opened up, received the pass from Stockton. Same exact thing. And we're going to stop in a second as we watch this, just to kind of see more of what their thought process was. All right, we got some more plays coming up. Same thing. And one of the things, if you talk to John Stockton and Karl Malone, that they'll tell you they don't understand why, but they kind of know. They're like, let's just try to win a basketball game, right? So they wish more young players, even in their generation, I shouldn't say more young players, that people ran the pick and roll because it's so hard to stop. And we'll briefly stop and talk about why it's so hard to stop. But they knew they could do the following. So if you watch where they set it up, they're inside the 3-point line most of the time, and they're usually parallel to the free throw line. So you can see that right here, all right? And I'll explain that in just a second. I'm going to let it run, and we're going to see if John Stockton gets a shot out of it. All right, he's trying to set it up again, passes right to Malone, easy score. And you would see them, they would run this all game long. All game long, this is what happened. Karl Malone is one of the top 5 scorers of all time in the NBA. And you can see why. It's just simple pick and roll. This is what he did. So right now, it looks like there's, as I'm looking for John Stockton's shot, I can see they're really concentrating on just on these highlights on Karl Malone temporarily. So I'll stop it if he doesn't get a shot here in a second. It looks like they're going to go back to Karl again. Yep. All right, let's just give it a few more times and we'll stop it. As one thing I can point out, and we can get back to the other point, is John is reading the defense just the way Karl is reading the defense. So he's reading the defense and he's looking to where he could score or he can pass the ball to Karl as he's doing. And this was pick your poison. And like I said, I'll talk a couple of things about this. So there, John got a shot. All right. So the reason why they always did this and they always killed teams, they went to the finals several times. Unfortunately for them, they ran into Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. When they were in the league, just so everybody knows, because Michael is an unbelievable player and deserves all the accolades that he gets. But before he retired, everybody would say Michael is the best player in the league. Scottie is the best all-around player. They don't give him that credit anymore for whatever reason. But the reason why they would, like John right here, going to that shot right at the free throw line, what they made the decision of is, do we want to win games or do we want to look cool playing? And they said, you know what, we want to go to the finals. We want to go deep in the playoffs. We want to have long Hall of Fame careers. So if we go down every single time, John, you can hit that free throw line jumper against NBA defense. You shoot it over 50% there every time. If I get a layup, we know I'm going to be able to make the layup. So they literally came up with a plan with their coach that said, if John takes a shot or I get this layup, we're going to probably average 75% every other time down court. So what they did, and a lot of the times what their offense was, is they picked out the NBA players who did not want to guard the pick and roll, that just were so frustrated by it. It's very hard to guard. And what happens is you may have a really great guard that can stay with John Stockton, okay? But chances are you're not going to have a great big man to go with John Stockton as well, or to go against Karl Malone. So it's going to be either or. You're going to have someone that could probably stay with Karl Malone, then they can't stay with Stockton. So you literally had teams that they would prepare for, and I hate to say it, you guys all know, I'm a big Laker fan. But the one thing that they always knew that the media wouldn't tell you, and you can ask them, and they would tell you 10 times, you can even pull it up on YouTube. And Karl Malone, he says one of the bigs that he loved to play against was Shaquille O'Neal. Not because he thought he was a better player than Shaquille O'Neal. He knew when it was time for the crunch play that Shaquille did not want to guard him on the pick and roll. All right? So I'm going to switch back to the main camera here. We kind of talked a little bit about, what they did and why they set it up. Okay. They set it up at right inside the 3-point line and parallel to the free throw line. And the reason why they set it up parallel to the free throw line was as is. They wanted to not just have the ball to where Karl Malone just could take one bounce and he's at the layup line. They knew that John Stockton was going to hit that free throw line jumper 50% of the time. Okay? So they knew that they would have a high percentage, like I mentioned before. Now, going back, they also knew, and their coach knew, that unless, a team had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Akeem Olajuwon on the same team. And I'll just kind of try to give you some modern day people that may be able to. It's kind of hard because Akeem could guard guards. I mean, he was just a freak. Doesn't get enough credit. But let's say, for instance, Karl Malone had someone that was, as and you saw in the video, he was big and very strong. Someone like Kevin Durant that's fast but bulkier with the same speed, that could chase after him, and a guard that could stay with Stockton. And even after that, if you're really doing what they're doing and you're really fundamentally sound, it almost doesn't matter because it's so hard. You have to be so disciplined. Everybody has to be aware. And even if you stop the pick and roll, you can usually find people on the outside. Okay? So right now I'm going to switch to Golden State. Golden State is a big user of a modern day user of the pick and roll, and Steph has done a great job of kind of changing the way coaches kind of think of the pick and roll. So he's still, if you watch him, I want everybody to watch him closely. He's looking for the pass. He's reading what both defenders are doing. He's reading where his big is going. But you're going to see when I start the video, because Draymond Green is such a threat when he has an open three-point shot, you'll see him dump it down behind him. Like he might be driving back to the basket and he just does a whip pass behind his back to an open Draymond, and they get a three. So they get a home run out of this simple pick and roll. So I'm going to switch to that video now and we'll kind of talk through it. All right, so here's a nice little lob play. Now that was a delayed thing. He could have went to Bogut there, but he passed it all the way across, and that's not something that we're really going to focus on. But here is one of the things that they have kind of really changed. You saw it there, and we'll look for another play where he went all the way behind him and kind of like that this way, but you'll see it where he comes back to Draymond for either a drive to the basket or a open three-point shot. Again, this is all they're doing is pick and roll. Nothing else is called on this. Just pick and roll. So he came back to Clay off of that one. Gives it to Draymond. Swings it all the way back to a wide open three. Same thing here. Yep. So you saw like 3 or 4 straight plays, and like I said, he's literally throwing it behind himself all the way back to a wide open person. And this all comes down to when you set this pick, the defense is always under pressure. It is one of the hardest things to defend in basketball if you have guys that can shoot and dribble to the basket. And the bottom line is you're creating a mismatch. So that's one thing that you try to do in basketball is create a mismatch. And anytime you have a big that has to switch to a small, usually the small wins. All right, so we're going to go back to the main camera and kind of talk about some of the things that we're going to have upcoming. All right, so we ran through a couple of different options, and what we did in practice again was we just started with the basics of rolling and opening the right way, calling for the ball, and getting open. You saw that as you guys were getting working with it, it was becoming easier and easier and easier. And then we started to transition to work on if your defender, if you have the ball and your defender is trying to fight through that pick, you can lead him like you're really going through that pick, and then you can go hard back to the opposite side, and you usually have such an easy layup. And a lot of you guys saw that and were able to score because you don't have that pressure of beating someone one-on-one. He's he's got kind of tangled up in the pick, and you're able to take it right to the basket. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to keep doing pick and roll. We're going to have a setup where we are going to do several things on one play. So we may do one pick, and as we go through the pick, we'll have the big man post up. So when he actually is dropping back, he's going to post up, and what you'll do is you'll do a curl pass around him. We'll also set up where the first person sets a pick, and then he passes to the other guy, and then immediately sets a pick for the open up back to the basket. So like I said, we're just going to keep building on these fundamentals, and the whole goal here, everyone, is just to make sure that we are prepared whenever we play against anyone to have a basic background, because if we have that basic background, what happens? No matter how talented they are, no matter how fast they are, we can go back to the fundamentals and we can get wins. We can get a lot of success this upcoming year by just doing the fundamentals. And basically what ends up happening is you have to have both if you really want to play at the next level. So that's what we're focused on. All right. So I know I had made a commitment to everyone to get the player videos done. So I have those done. What I did was, so we have our YouTube site. What I did was I linked them, I uploaded them, but they're not published. So they're private right now. So what I'll do is I'll, throughout the weekend, I'll start sending links so you can go view your private videos and look at some of the stuff that you're doing. Starting next week, we're going to go back to having some of our video. So the challenge with that video was, everybody's in different, clothes or what have you. So what I'm thinking of doing is getting some practice jerseys, and that way it's really easy to see, what we're trying to do, so we can, do our further film study. All right. So I know this is going to be a short one today, just because I know a lot of you guys I still did it live, and I'll go back and edit some of the stuff. But I know some of you have Flight Academy today with your schools. Some are out of town. So I know a lot of people can't make the live stream, and they're going to watch this later. But, please, before next practice, look at these videos. I'm going to also include some links where some of the older players from the NBA walk you through some of the basic parts of the screen and explain why, and you can hear it in their terms. So what they'll do is push the coach aside, and they'll give you more of the intimate details. They'll talk about when someone is pushing and how it actually can be advantageous, because what that guy's doing, and typically with your feel which way he's pushing you, you can spin the opposite way. So they'll go into a lot of the details that you'll need when you're going up against certain players in competition. All right. So with that said, I know everybody's getting their report cards today. I need to see a copy of those next week, and that way we can make any adjustments. And over the weekend, if you can, try to watch this video, but definitely before next practice. And as always, see you next stream. Orlando Ballers out.